I produced a very big presentation for this meeting. I think it runs to about 47 pages. It's either in your deck or you can download it online. And I kind of thought this morning that maybe you don't want me to rehearse a set of slides that I'm pretty sure you're more than capable of reading yourselves and frankly, making up your own mind about whether there's any trade secrets locked therein that you can learn about. So in 20 minutes, I kind of figured it wasn't the best use of my time, and I wanted to leave you with what I genuinely believe is the most important thought about customer service and customer experience in financial services. I come from a small bank called First Direct. Many of you will be familiar with it. It was established in '89. It's got about 1.2 million customers. It doesn't disclose its profitability. If you like, in the public domain, it's a division of HSBC, but it's a highly profitable institution, and it's a very young one. It's only been going 22 years, and it's tried to innovate throughout. A little bit more context. It's 2,700 people. It's a highly recommended bank when it comes to independent consumer polls. We've got, any number of prizes, and we keep winning them. So when you take over as the leader of that brand, there's only really one way that you can look, and that's to look down. And I live in perpetual fear that on my watch, because I'm, if you like, a caretaker of that brand, I will leave it as number 2 when it comes to customer satisfaction in financial services. And that would be more mortifying than I can begin to describe. So when I thought about what I might share with you today, and I've written a few notes because it was an experience that I had yesterday, I thought there's one central theme that's probably worth me reinforcing. And my story starts last evening. My PA is a lady called Beverly Abbott. She's a Yorkshire lass. She's been to London once in her life. And I come to London pretty much once a week. So I tell her that I'm going to be talking in a hotel near the Strand, and can she get me a hotel in the middle of London? And that's a fairly vague idea for Beverly, bless her heart. So I end up, not too bad, on the Tottenham Court Road, but on the wrong end of the Tottenham Court Road, at a tiny little hotel that I've stayed in before. And I arrived last night late. And I say late because I arrived at 6:30 in the hotel, and I was supposed to be in Covent Garden at 6:30. So I'm not in the best, if you like, mindset. I want to get in, I want to get out. And there's a delay in reception because there's essentially, I think, a plane load of cabin crew have arrived at the same time. But that's life. So I wait in the queue, and eventually I get to talk to a nice young man who is, going to do check-in. And he starts, if you like, by asking me what my postcode is. Now, that resonates with me because one of the first things you're going to be asked if you call First Direct, the conversation is going to start with, "Hello, my name is Mark. Can I take your postcode, please?" And that conversation has been the same conversation in our brand for pretty much the 22 years of our existence. Now, most of our customers don't use the phone anymore, but those that do will be familiar with that little customer journey of identifying who you are and making sure that you know that you're talking to a real person and that they know you. So my hopes are raised. But unfortunately, although I've stayed in this range of hotels and in this hotel quite a lot, my name doesn't exist on the computer screen, which is no great shakes. I'm not too bothered about it. As I said, I want to get in, I want to get out and get to my room as quickly as possible. The conversation continues that it's 6:30 in the evening, but apparently the room's not been cleaned. There are 5 rooms that I could have stayed in, but none of them have been cleaned, and I'm beginning to wonder what the housekeeping staff have been doing all day. But not to worry. Nice man says there is a single room available on the top floor. Now, I'm a single man, so that's absolutely fine, and the top floor will do very well. And he says, "Would you like smoking or non-smoking?" Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm away from home, and I'm not allowed to smoke in my house. It's verboten. But this is a hotel. So I figured to myself, who cares? I'll have a smoking room, please. All very good. He books the smoking room. And then he asks me, "Would you like to prepay for the room, or would you like to prepay for the room with extras?" Now, my mind wanders somewhere. I'm not proud of it. But I quickly sort of pull myself back to attention, and I say, listen, I'll just pay for the room, thank you very much. We'll leave the extras for some other time. And then he says, would you like to sign in? And there's this groovy little pad on the front of the reception desk, which is one of those sort of touch pads. And I pick up the little stylus, or whatever pen that you're supposed to use to sign in, and just as I'm about to sign, the first of 4 pages of terms and conditions gets projected onto this screen. And I've got to click through each page of terms and conditions before I finally get to the signature slot at the end. Hands up if you think I read any of the terms and conditions. Who would have thought that you're going into a hotel and now you've got to sign a whole bunch of terms and conditions and disclaimers? God only knows what they think I'm going to get up to in the hotel, or what liability they may well believe that they're going to end up with if I don't sign these terms and conditions. The elevators are packed because the cabin crew are still milling around reception, so I walk up the 5 floors to the top of the hotel, and I seem to have this curse that wherever I stay in London, I will definitely be put in the room that is the farthest room from the elevators and the farthest room from reception. So I make my way down to the room. And I have a little code key. And you know what's coming next. So I put my code key in the room, and I take it out, and it doesn't open. And there's 3 indicators, red, amber, and green. And I get the amber, and I get the red and the amber, and I get the red. And I get the red and the amber and the green, but I don't get the green. So honestly, at this stage, what had been a fairly easy customer journey, I'm now angry at the hotel. Gone way beyond the slightly impatient, because it's really my fault that I'm late, into the it doesn't work, when suddenly, against all expectation, the room door pops open. And I go in. At that point, I discover that the spring loading on the door is designed to keep a Sherman tank out of my hotel room. But undeterred, I push my way through the door, and I get into this room, which consists of, frankly, a bed and a toilet. But that's okay, because I'm not going to be staying in the room. I want to drop my stuff off. I want to get out. And then I discover that things like the soap are bolted to the wall, right? And there's a message saying that the reason that the soap dispenser and the shampoo dispenser is bolted to the wall is because it's a more ecologically friendly way to replenish consumables in the hotel room. And we're all kind of familiar with that story now, which is don't use your towels and don't change the bed sheets, but clearly don't steal the soap either. Not deterred by that, I decide I'll hang up my jacket. And when I hang up my jacket, this is what happens. I get one of these. Are you familiar with one of these? How many people in this room love one of these? In all the years that I've been in banking, and one of the things that that happens when you're the CEO of a bank like First Direct is that you have this split personality. You live half your life trying to do your job, and then the other half of your life you live looking at how other organizations design customer experiences. Because I'm always kind of got a weather eye out for people who do things well, people from whom we might be able to learn. And it's not about banking, it's just about anything. So you're kind of perpetually living this dual life. This is the most perfect metaphor for the role of the customer in certain hotels and certain sort of entertainment groups around the world. What does this say about a customer, ladies and gentlemen? Thief! This is about thievery. What does the terms and conditions say about the customer, ladies and gentlemen? We don't trust you. We're covering our backside. What does the would you like to prepay for extras before you go to your room say about the customer? It says you might have Hoover lips. You might clean out the minibar because you're in a hotel and suddenly you go through a transformation of personality simply because you're away from home. What does having the soap nailed to the wall say about a customer, ladies and gentlemen? Thief! You may well clear out the bathroom and the minibar. And then, as though that wasn't enough, you might steal the hangers as well. And when I reflected on all of those little symbols, and I hold my hand up and tell you that I am not your average customer in respect of I'm kind of looking for stuff. And so maybe lots of people just don't see this. I'm pretty sure that every one of the decisions, and these were decisions, design decisions that this hotel group made, is a rational and reasonable and well-proven design decision. They know that customers will steal the coat hangers. It's just human nature, because you all know that the coat hangers in your wardrobe you got from the dry cleaners and they're wire crap, whereas the decent wooden ones from the hotel rooms, well, they're good, so I'll kind of stick a few of them in my bag. And against all expectation, the world's multimillionaires will still empty the soap into their bag before they leave the hotel. It's a wonder that hotels have any towels, or frankly, anything else that isn't nailed to the floor in a hotel room. So when you stand back from this and you think about the logic of the design decisions that this business has made in architecting its customer experience, I think you'll find that every single one of those decisions makes sense, pays back, and is a strong business case. Don't you agree? And some of them have a great motive. Some of them genuinely do save the planet at some small or at least symbolic way. My problem with them is that those considerations have taken preeminence over the customer's experience, the customer's journey. Turns out that the organization, possibly in order to pursue a price point, and this is one of the great tensions in any industry, is looking for ways to minimize its costs. But if in minimizing its costs, what it manages to do is to essentially set up a boundary between the brand and the customer, and that boundary is essentially saying, we don't trust you. All the little signals and all the little flags that we've put in your way tell you, without us ever shouting it from the rooftops, that we don't actually trust our clients. I think it's a profound insight, not just to banking, because we haven't even spoken about the joys that banks put you through. It's a profound insight about where customer service experience and where customer experience in organization gets lost. And I really do mean it gets lost. And so there's a whole bunch of things I can say to you about First Direct this morning, but there's only really one thing I believe as the core driver of customer experience in my company, and frankly in any company that I really have come to value as a customer experience delivering proposition. And that is all about attitude. It is entirely encapsulated in whether you have an attitude to customers that places them, truly places them, as the point. That the only point in an organization is to find a way to please and satisfy and drive value for your customers. And it's obvious. And I'm sorry that if you wanted me to say something more profound, but what troubles me about it is that here we are sitting in the 21st century, and the number of organizations that I encounter who actually believe that attitude to customers is the most important thing in their organization is tiny. It's absolutely tiny. Every year, and I mean every year, and this is the second stint that I've had at First Direct, some wise man somewhere in the HSBC group comes knocking on the door of First Direct with a fabulous idea to save money. And that fabulous idea to save money usually involves us implementing an IVR on our telephone. I'm not sure whether we're the only, but we're certainly one of the only banks in the world that doesn't have an IVR on its telephone service. So when you call First Direct, you're going to get through to a person on the phone. And it goes an awful lot deeper than that. We train our people very well. 40% of the people who work in First Direct were recommended by people who already worked in First Direct. So there's a tradition and a family in First Direct that is self-reinforcing. It's been described to me by a colleague somewhere else as a perfect little ecosystem. The idea that you can take one part of it and stick it in another organization and make it work is absolute nonsense. So sometimes when you come to presentations like this, you worry about how much you should say. I don't care how much you know about First Direct. First Direct is absolutely not successful because it has fantastic technology. It is really not successful because it's got a fantastic working environment or premises. It's successful because the attitude that drives First Direct today is the same attitude that drove it in 1989. And that attitude places the customer right at the heart of the business. And everything that our organization tries to do is a wrestle between trying to do what's best for the customer and reconciling that with what the organization actually wants and needs. And it's a really, really difficult challenge to try and manage. Because when you cost something like IVR, you find out that a call to First Direct costs twice as much on average in our industry as a call to any other bank. And that's not small potatoes. There's a huge business case for implementing something like automated telephony at FD. On paper, it's entirely the right thing to do. So hands up if you like IVR telephone systems. There's not a huge number of fans out there. And hands up if you know, oh, all right, it's not even hands up. How many organizations don't use them? There's one, there's two. It's the minority. So, it's not a very long speech, but there we go. There's only really one thing I wanted to say to you, and that is about understanding that if you want to create a superior experience in anything, you have to understand, for me at least, the vagaries of living in the shoes of the customer that you serve. Part of my problem in the hotel last night was my problem of my creation. I'm late, I'm disorganized, and that's exactly the problem that we have in banking. Our customers are untidy. They're chaotic at times. They bring problems that we didn't create, and they then attach those problems to our industry, which is, you sort it out. If you start from a defensive perspective in engaging with that sort of customer, if you start by trying to explain to the customer that it's his or her fault that the situation has arisen, I would argue that you've already demonstrated that the customer is frankly not the most important in the person in the room for your organization. As long as I'm CEO of First Direct, and I really do mean this, we will never implement IVR in our brand. We will never, ever do it. Technology for our business is now a major, major challenge. And it's a major challenge because one of the things that drove customers to choose First Direct in the first place was the idea that they could be more in control of their money dealing with us than dealing on the high street. Which is ironic, because other than the people I meet at forums like this or out in social events, I don't meet customers at First Direct. None of the people who work in Sturton or in Glasgow for my business meet customers. The paradox of First Direct is that the farther away from the customers we are, the more engaged and more satisfied the relationship between our customers and our brand becomes. And so I work in an industry where everyone is now re-falling in love with high street banking. Let's buy as many branches as we possibly can and dot them all over the country, on the basis that the bricks and mortar or clicks and mortar model is the model, that will serve the industry best. And I have to tell you, I don't buy it. And I don't buy it because I have not seen the banking organization that manages to create the tedious reliability and consistency that First Direct manages to create day in, day out. Because in that distributed model, it is incredibly challenging to establish performance standards and consistency from one part of the country to the other. And that's just not a challenge that we have to face. So the 2,700 people that work in First Direct in Leeds work under the same roof. And I get a whole bunch of people saying, but we can't do that. And my answer is, but you choose not to do that. Okay. Lots of different organizational design decisions are inevitably going to drive important outcomes for your customer. Yeah? In our industry, one of the things that is most important, and I'll leave you with this thought, is that customers just want things to work. They don't want things necessarily to be brilliant. They don't expect that you're going to be the cheapest, believe it or not. They don't expect that you're going to surprise and delight them, although we do that at FD. They just want things to be monotonously reliable. Monotonous reliability in banking is an undervalued quality. The idea that when you enter a brand, at whatever touch point you enter it, it's just going to work, most people would ascribe to being some form of hygiene factor. But it's the hygiene factors in our industry that are probably the most damaging to customer experience in the long run. The overwhelming majority of complaints that I manage personally relate to simple things that went wrong, that weren't sorted out quickly, and that escalate into something bigger. And so back to my experience in the hotel. There was nothing fundamentally wrong with the hotel, and I'll probably stay there again. But by the time I get to the fifth error, or the fifth problem, what was in fact an irritation at the beginning has become a brand destroyer at the end. Thank you.